Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Shedding light on this story, Dr. Hegazy, now 3 days of conflict between both sides, the Israeli and Palestinian sides. Now, Egypt was able to broker the ceasefire deal swiftly in a very short period of time. How would you see the success of the Egyptian mediation between both sides, and how was the Egyptian diplomacy able to do that in such a short period of time in a very critical situation?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, it is a very positive development, I think, in the overall history of the conflict. So much has been said about the deterioration of the Egyptian role, that the Palestinian problem is not anymore central to Egypt, and all of this comes absolutely to nothing now when we see how important it is, the role of Egypt, how important the subject itself to Egypt and Egypt's politics and diplomacy. So really, it is the acts that speak volumes rather than just words and criticism by so many people who do nothing for the Palestinians. At least we're doing something. We were able to broker this deal, as you said, in almost immediately after it arose. Last time we lost 260 lives.
Yes.
Very obviously, even one life is too much, right? We offer our condolences to the 44 people the families of the 44 people who lost their lives on the Palestinian side. Absolutely, we wish that this didn't happen, but at least we were able to stop it, and stop it effectively, almost after allowing a day or two. But the third day, the ceasefire was announced. So it is a success story. It shows how Egypt can help, especially now with the stability of Egypt, the leadership. This is something that the Arabs need. They need the big brother, the leader of the region to step up and to be able to resolve these big issues. So I am absolutely happy for this, and I think we can build on it to end at least the suffering of the people in Gaza. As you know, their living conditions are really horrible, and the lack of power, as you say, they're only, even in very good circumstances, they're only getting 16 hours of power, right? Of electricity every day. This is something that now a normal person, does not accept. So hopefully we can build on this. With the relationship we have with the Israelis, we can improve the situation. I'm glad that Hamas decided not to interfere this time. The issue was between the Jihad faction and the Israelis, and Egypt really played a very crucial role.
Well, there was a lot of international reaction by world leaders. We've seen the praise by the U.S. President Joe Biden, the Arab Parliament Speaker, the UN, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Everybody has been praising the Egyptian mediation. Now, you've mentioned now the big brother sort of role Egypt is enjoying within the Arab region and the Middle East. How much do you think these steps and these movements by the Egyptian diplomacy does and weigh in for its political place and position and weight within the international community as a whole?
Let's first take it at the Arab and the regional level, because you need to convince everyone that this is the right way to do it, right? Is to really come together, try to unify your efforts, and trying to line up under one leader instead of having too many voices conflicting each other. That has been the story for the last, 30, 40 years. So it is an example of how the Arab world could negotiate with Israel, the strong voice, the unification of the region. Israel would listen to that, hopefully would listen to that. It is difficult, right?
Yes.
We've tried everything. But diplomacy could be much better when you have a leadership strong as Egypt. So this is on the regional level, at least to send that message. Hopefully it has been heard by those who have any doubt in their minds about the Egyptian role. Everyone knows, even the Palestinians would tell you, without Egypt we have no hope. You know, we rely on Egypt. Everyone, when you go to the Arab world, you know, visit, you know, see people, they always talk about the Egyptian role.
Yes.
Politics sometimes take different directions, but that's the reality, right? On the international level now, the U.S. has seen, you know, how important the Egyptian role is. Some U.S. politicians in the past have tried to discount that role and maybe offer alternatives, and we've seen that those alternatives will take us nowhere, right? So that's another message for the U.S. side. The UN, obviously the UN, yes, it's very diplomatic and everything, but to me, the most important thing is the reaction of the US, the reaction of Russia, the Chinese when they see that. We should build on this, in my opinion. I think Egypt should take advantage of this situation. The Palestinians should as well. The Israelis, I think they have an interest in developing this further. They see that, you know, we were able to negotiate with too tough, you know, a very tough side on the Palestinian side, right? The jihad, you know, the extremists of the extremists, and then, you know, the Israel is always difficult to, you know, deal with them. So we're able to broker this deal, as you said. It shows everyone that we, you know, could build on it. We should learn from this story, and hopefully, you know, we push it a little bit further than just, you know, resolving, you know, getting a ceasefire. Hopefully we have a permanent ceasefire. And even the Israelis, as you said in your report, said, you know, if things, you know, can calm down a little bit for, you know, a little bit further, we can move into something more permanent.
Yes. Well, we've seen the Israeli aircraft pummeling a lot of sites within the Gaza Strip. Now, also, there's been a really tough humanitarian issues taking place there. You've mentioned the power shortages. I mean, 16 hours a day now with the fuel shortages and the power shortages. It even reached 8 hours a day, and Egypt has been quick to send its own fuel and its own energy to the Gaza enclave, along with a lot of humanitarian aid. Now, it shows that Egypt is not only talking between both sides and talking to both sides and trying to broker a ceasefire, but actually actively trying to make a difference on the ground.
Absolutely.
How much do you think this will really solidify its political and diplomatic weight, especially in this decades-long dispute between both sides?
Now, it is, I don't know, you know, if you could remind me, but it was the first time that Egypt actually invested in Gaza and reconstructing, you know, buildings and towns that have been demolished completely in the last
$500 million.
Right? In a time where Egypt really needs every dollar, right?
Yes.
This speaks volume about, you know, what do we think as Egyptians about Palestinians and Palestine? It's in the heart of the Egyptian diplomacy, Egyptian politics, even Egyptian life. So I'm with you that, you know, it is a tough time. Egypt has already done things on the ground, but it makes it also to Israel, it makes it closer to us, you know, situation that we have invested in Gaza. So Israeli actions, not only touching, you know, the Palestinians, but also indirectly touching us, because, you know, we have spent that money to rebuild those towns, and now you're destroying them, or you want to destroy them. So that, you know, that's why maybe that explains how this time our interaction or our reaction was quicker, right? Because now we've got something invested in Gaza, and it makes it more personal to us, right?
Yes.
And hopefully the Israelis get this message. You can't, you know, have your cake and eat it at the same time. You can't, you know, on one hand, do these things to the Palestinians, and on the other hand, ask us to, you know, normalize politics with you and, you know, play, you know, soft with you and all these things, and, you know, be happy with you, right? Our people won't accept this, and we can't sell it to our people. So obviously, you've got to show us that we have something in compensation. We have something in return to this, you know, so-called normalization. Normalization doesn't mean that, you know, we say something in the morning and we do the opposite at night.
Yes. Well, 500, I mean, that's $500 million of Egyptian investment in the Gaza Strip. So it makes it even much more personal to Egypt. Now, do you think that maybe this is one step where maybe we can find some sort of a lasting political diplomatic solution within for this conflict? Do you think that maybe now things can take a different sort of turn? The conversations, the dialogues, the mediations, the negotiations can have a different tone to it?
You know, Hani, it is difficult to, you know, to bring all these, you know, a lot of factors need to come together, right? This is just one element, which is the escalation on the ground in the middle of a conflict, you know, and firing on both sides. You know, we obviously take the side of the Palestinians. We don't think of them as equal sides. You know, we always stand and support our, you know, Palestinian brothers. But it is only one small element of the big conflict.
Yes.
All the other factors are not always in our hands as Egyptians. You know, the U.S. and that's, I said, you know, as I said, the U.S. reacted very well. Immediately they commended Egypt for what we did. I think they realized, because they've been in different administrations kind of somehow discounting our role and our value, and they used, you know, other languages that we were not used to. Now maybe they get the message. Also how the Israelis themselves react to this. You know, they change governments all the time. You know, this is a new government. You know, it's not even a stable government. In order to resolve the big issue, you need a strong Israeli government, and you need leadership and support from the people, from the Israelis themselves, that they really want peace. Okay, so this is one factor. You need the U.S. to be determined about that, unlike, you know, the previous administration, where, you know, they were siding completely with the Israelis against the Arabs. Biden didn't show yet that he really is paying attention to the, and I don't blame him, you know, because I know he has a lot of issues, internal issues, and you know, on top of that, you got the inflation, the global issues, economic issues, the problem with China, huge problem with China, and then you've got the Ukrainian problem as well. So politically, I don't think the situation is ripe for a big solution, but it is actually a good timing for at least calming down the situation, because the world and the US and the big, you know, players cannot afford to have another big issue, another big conflict in the region. So, you know, these are two different things. Not, you know, I'm not optimistic for like a permanent end to the Middle East problem.
Yes.
It takes much bigger, you know, efforts than that. But at the same time, it is a good timing for everyone to press and say, well, you know, you got to calm down. You know, the world cannot afford to have another big issue.
Yes. Those 3 days of conflict between the Israeli side, I mean, usually it was the Hamas group. Now it's the Jihad movement group. Is it a tougher sort of confrontation between both sides than what is usually between the Israeli side and Hamas? Is it a softer one? Are they both the same? How are they responding in terms of negotiations and mediation? Because the Israeli side is saying, well, maybe we can build on it if calm prevails. So how different is it now, the Jihad movement, from the Hamas faction in terms of resolving the conflict?
My analysis is a bit easier than the Hamas, because obviously Jihad is not Hamas. You know, it doesn't have the popularity of Hamas. Hamas controls Gaza, right? We know that. So Jihad is, you know, as a small player or a smaller player in Gaza than Hamas. So and also they didn't have the support of Hamas. So Hamas didn't follow through, right? So these two elements, I think, made the Egyptians able to at least negotiate, you know, the deal quicker, in a quicker way than last time. Last time was Hamas, right? And it was, you know, all over, you know. So we got a tougher deal to broker than this time. So I think these two elements makes it a bit easier. Although, on the other hand, jihadists or the Jihad faction a little bit more, you know, naive politically than Hamas, right? And that naivete makes it a bit difficult sometimes, because they don't always, you know, take into consideration all the political elements. They're not as savvy as Hamas, for example, in making, you know, political analysis and making sensitive decisions. You know, so the Egyptians had to play with all these elements.
Yes. Well, do you think that this naivety would actually make sure that the calm and the truce and the ceasefire last, or do you think it makes it very unpredictable and fragile?
I think it is fragile because of that third element that you mentioned. I think it makes it a bit fragile, and that's why we need also to keep talking to all the sides, even Hamas, because Hamas plays an important role. We don't want Hamas to, come into the picture. And by keeping this neutrality, I think it will play a role in convincing the jihad side to calm things down. But at the same time, the Israelis have to fulfill their promises, right? They said, they will allow the fuel to come in. They demolished the power plant, right?
Yes.
Which caused this problem. So they need to, whatever they promised to Egypt that they will do once the jihadists stay calm, they need to do that, need to honor their word. So every side has something to do, and Egyptians also will continue to do, their, behind the scene negotiations and talking to make sure this lasts a little bit longer.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is about today's main story, the ceasefire between the Israelis and the jihad movement in Palestine. Hopefully, calm will prevail, and hopefully it is, more negotiations and better development being built on for the next near future. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for the National Alliance for Development work, President Al-Sisi ordered an additional 1 billion Egyptian pounds of the state's money to be directed and injected for the National Alliance. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.